And Tony, you can begin in just about 1 minute, okay?
Okay. We'll wait for people to, or do we show the attendees list on here or?
Okay, Tony, you can begin when you're ready.
Okay, great. Well, welcome everyone to Empowering Your Digital Workspace, presented by ATSG. Today, we're going to talk about a few topics. But first, let me introduce myself. Tony Farino, Senior Vice President of Solutions and Innovation for ATSG. So I really work with our teams to help develop our go-to-market strategies, our technologies that we use, and solutioning for our organization. I also work with our sales and solutioning teams to ensure that we meet business and technical requirements for our clients. So what I'd like to do today is talk about several items. One, a brief introduction to ATSG and an overview of our portfolio, our solutions portfolio, and then dive into the digital workplace solutions, again, powered by Citrix. We'll talk about our project implementation of solutions and our cloud version of those solutions as well. And then also we're going to have a guest speaker, Dave Crenshaw, talk about empowering your digital workplace as well. So let's start off with our solutions portfolio. So ATSG has three major business units that we deliver our services from. One is called ReadyTech, which is our consulting, engineering, architecture, and implementation division, which really provides project services. And we'll talk about that in the 6 towers that we provide project services for coming up. Our ReadySecure is our security practice, where we provide comprehensive cybersecurity solutions for consulting as well as operations, security operation. And then our Ready Management, where we provide enterprise, global managed services and technology solutions as a service offerings. Within those, ReadyTech is managed by our project managers. Our ReadySecure and Ready Managed solutions are managed by our service delivery management, and all has a wrapper with our technology platform that's called AI Squared. It's really, the integration and automation of 30 plus technologies that help us deliver our solutions in an integrated and automated fashion with our clients. And we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So if we look at ReadyTech, there's really 6 major towers that we provide services within. One is the digital workplace, which we're going to talk today, and is the topic of our webinar for today, about the rapid and secure deployment and management of endpoint devices. ATSG also provides project solutions around designing and architect and building enterprise networks. We have a customer experience or contact center practice where we provide that enterprise end-to-end customer experience solutions. Unified communications or various technologies like Cisco and Microsoft. Productivity and collaboration solutions that are also integrated into our contact center and unified communication solutions. as well as server and cloud. Now, some of these solutions we also provide as a managed service, but as you can imagine, as an example with server and cloud, a lot of clients will have, their own data centers, server closets, and so forth, and we manage those as well as part of our solutions and implement that as part of our multi-cloud solution. If we look at Ready Secure, our security solutions are really divided into two major areas. One is around security consulting, which focuses on assessing the risk and threat and vulnerabilities of a client size. And they're broken down into these 5 major categories. One is around network and physical security assessments, so understanding those internal and external vulnerabilities within a client's environment. Around application security, so making sure that the applications our clients are using are secure and safe. Doing and performing mobile and computer forensics as well as digital network investigations. A lot of times we may have clients that get attacked by ransomware or other malware or bad actors, and we could go in and understand where that patient zero is, or where that source of that attack is, and where the command and control, or where those bad actors are sending that information, so we could help close those gaps and also do investigations, work with leagues, work with the FBI if necessary, and even work with the bad actors if ransom is going to be paid by our clients. So we get very deeply involved in all aspects of assessing the risks and threat and vulnerabilities of an enterprise. The final one is really the social engineering, which is the non-technical part, I'd like to say, of security consulting. The network physical assessments, application, computer forensics, and network and digital investigations are all about looking at the devices and the information that flows to those devices. But social engineering and exploiting human vulnerabilities is a huge part of security, and that training and assessment is extremely important to provide a holistic approach to security consulting and assessing those vulnerabilities within a client enterprise. So once we've done the consulting, or if there is a particular need that a client has around having to fill those gaps from an operational perspective, we provide the proactive monitoring and management and remediation of those vulnerabilities that have been discovered either through our consulting services, through the or other third party. And those consist in these major 3 buckets. So one is around security, information, and event monitoring, or SIM, or managed detection and response. So that it's really monitoring, eyes on glass, looking at security events coming in, doing all the correlation, and handling and remediating those alerts that come in so that we can minimize the risk of any impact. Or also, if there is a threat, we could also detect that threat and cut it off before it becomes worse. And if it has happened, we could use that as a tool to forensically find out where that attack came from, and again, help close those vulnerabilities going forward. Traditional managed security infrastructure, such as identity and access management, and managing intrusion prevention and firewalls, multi-factor, single sign-on, email security, advanced threat detection, and managed detection and response solutions all fall under our security operations, and we provide those as fully managed services to our clients using our tools or using the client's tools or using a hybrid. And then, of course, we're talking today about the digital workplace. So those mobiles and endpoint devices are critically important, and usually a lot of times the tip of the spear into an environment. So protecting those mobile devices and those applications, managing the application lifecycle, ensuring that those devices and the data on them is secure, and providing the endpoint protection and policy management for those devices is critical. So we have a whole practice in our security around mobility and endpoint services as well. And then finally, within Ready Manage, we provide our managed services to help improve operations and reduce expenses for our clients. So they fall into these 6 main categories: around enterprise service desk, so IT service management, providing tier 1 through tier 3 support, ticketing system, analytics, and providing that complete solution as well as governance and appropriate processes for operating and managing a global service desk. Remote infrastructure management, so monitoring, managing network systems and applications for our clients, and providing that tier 2, tier 3 support to help remediate problems in their infrastructure environments. Also integrated into that is our endpoint and site management. So when there is a problem and someone needs to be dispatched to support that mobile device or that desktop, we can provide those resources to either on a full-time basis or on an as-needed basis, or built into our solution on a periodic basis in order to manage and support those endpoint solutions. Application monitoring and management and application performance management. So monitoring applications such as our collaboration and our contact center solutions from Cisco and Microsoft. Managing ERP solutions like SAP, Dynamics, and Oracle, as well as managing databases, business intelligence, data warehousing, and DevOps as well. We have architected and designed and built data protection and management solutions to handle on-site and off-site data backup and recovery, as well as disaster recovery and off-site data storage, and of course, cloud. So we operate in a multi-cloud environment. We are a Microsoft Gold National Partner, so we kind of have a Microsoft Azure first, but also work very well with Amazon Web and have our own cloud, which we call Ready Cloud, which is our fit-for-purpose cloud solution for our clients. And then finally, our technology solutions as a service is the way that we bundle some of our solutions by taking hardware, software, implementation services, managed services, and building those all into a unit rate. So for example, with Digital Workplace, we work with our clients to basically migrate them from their physical desktops, provide all the infrastructure, provide all the managed services and all the project work, and give them a per unit rate for that particular device. Same thing with unified communication and other solutions that we provide as a technology solution as a service. So it's a way to take all the capital costs and all the operating costs for one and ongoing or reoccurring and bundle them to one monthly operating fee. And one specific note, I have a slide in here around our Microsoft offerings. I mentioned we're a Microsoft Gold partner, and we provide a lot of services, and that is really adjacent to a lot of work that we do with Citrix. Citrix Cloud is in Azure Cloud. So we provide these six major areas around endpoint management, Office 365, Teams, Azure Cloud, Microsoft Security, mobile device and application management. This presentation will be made available, and you can look at all the detailed areas that we have in the gray here for each one of them, but wanted to give everyone here, just from this portfolio view, a comprehensive view that ATSG is a project organization. We are a managed services organization and have complete security services and operations as well on a global basis. So let's talk a little bit about the digital workplace powered by Citrix. So when we look at our workspace strategy today, there's really three main areas to focus on. One is around unifying work, securing work, and simplifying work. So the ability to be agile and resilient and adapt to business and the economic environments that we're in today, to make sure it's secure. Security is top of mind for everybody, has been for a number of years, but more so every year. So making sure we kind of have a zero trust approach to our digital workplace strategy. And also with unifying and making it secure, we also want to make it simple, right? We don't want to have all these constraints about it has to be done this way or it's very complex to operate. It has to be built in and automated so that it's seamless to the end user. So again, unifying, securing, and simplifying our work is our strategy. So when we look at the workplace strategy and kind of say, is the status quo good enough? When you look at some of the facts, especially now through the pandemic, 80% are adopting a flexible work strategy. And I would even suggest that number is even higher. More contractors are being hired than ever before. The average cost of a security breach is around $4 million. So really questioning how people are working and making sure that it's agile from any device, anywhere, anytime is really, really paramount to our clients in the workplace today. So when we look at employee engagement, even as people were talking about, well, when the pandemic's over or when people go back to work, that there were still going to be somewhere around a third of the employees will still work. A lot of organizations are adopting, work from home permanently or come into the office a certain amount of days per week. But there's going to be a significant amount of employees that will be working remotely going forward, right? And I think that's going to be an increasing trend. So the ability to rapidly onboard, reduce complexity, and keep people informed and up to date and make it easy for them is going to be ever more important. Another area around employee engagement is with the work from home strategy, and what's happened over the past couple of years especially is it's no longer that I have to hire in region for the people that I'm looking for my resources. I could hire them from anywhere, because if I have a proper work from home strategy, it doesn't matter that if my office is in New Jersey, York, or Florida, wherever it be, I could hire someone in California, in Texas, overseas. It doesn't really matter. So the talent acquisition strategy and the ability to manage and retain that talent has changed as well. So the ability to be flexible with your workplace and be able to ensure that you can secure it, is again, a paramount importance to our strategy. Another around contact center transformation. 71% of business leaders are looking to enhance their productivity, especially in this space. So again, making it secure, making device flexibility. It doesn't have to be a particular device. I could use my current devices. I could buy new devices. I could have a hybrid environment. It won't matter. I could have reliable performance that is secure. So more better on, faster call handling, which equates to better customer satisfaction. So really, we have to kind of reimagine that physical workspace. So as I mentioned earlier, with 33% of people working from home remotely, there's been some studies that 58% will reduce office space, and we see that happening today. That people to go back to a physical space is not really going to be a hard, fast requirement going forward. So the ability to consolidate those offices, reduce costs, simplify, not have this hub and spoke architecture for my infrastructure is really going to be critical. So I need to have that flexibility. I need to have resiliency because I need to make sure that no single points of failure in the environment that I'm working in, and it needs to be available every day for my workspace. So when I look at that, you really say, okay, I need an architecture that's going to enable me to meet all those requirements. And that's really what we find within the Citrix architecture, right? It's the ability to have apps move to the cloud or a SaaS structure. The ability for workers to be mobile and use any device, whether it's on VPN, whether it's over their wireless connection, whether it's over their cellular connection, whether it's a fast connection or not, right? They need to be able to work whatever device they're on, whatever connection they're on, to be able to effectively perform their day-to-day tasks. And then because we talked about security, and we're going to keep talking about that, is threats are rapidly evolving. So with flexibility, you cannot give up security. So you have to make sure that the architecture that we're using, which is the Citrix architecture, we'll touch on in a minute, is secure in order to ensure that we have an environment that is not only flexible, but will also meet security requirements for my organization. So kind of that legacy hardware base, as I mentioned earlier, hub and spoke architecture, will impact customer employee experiences. And we really need to either, build this in a cloud environment and make it readily available, or for clients that do have their own cloud or their own data centers and architecture, build it on-prem for them so they can make it available to their workers. So again, we look at it as saying, we're not concerned that it has to be in the cloud or it has to be on-prem. We look to understand what the client's requirements are, and then we could do either, right? Because every client is different. Some have different capabilities, whether it's resourcing, whether it's physical, landscapes that we could build this in, operate it for them or operate it, or we can have a fully outsourced model where they pay by the drink and have a digital workplace securely available to their end users. So a couple pain points, and it's interesting, we talked about some of the other ones, but I don't think these are as obvious, right? When you look at employee retention, there was a study that was done that shows that employees, the number 3 reason why they stay or leave a company, only behind salary and their manager, is the technology and the tools that they have. So it's interesting, and I paused a couple times when I read this, and I had to read it several times. It's pretty interesting. Besides who they're working for and their salary, it's the technology the organization uses that is one of the 3 reasons, is the number 3 reason why someone would stay with an organization. So it's pretty interesting. It was not just that, well, they use Citrix, but it's what Citrix and that platform delivers, right, to them. It's able to deliver their applications to them rapidly, quickly, securely from anywhere, any device. So the ability to have ease of use along with security and that flexibility is paramount. And that's an interesting, statistics that we look for employee retention. Employee productivity and engagement. Employees, again, another study shows that the average typical worker only uses 4 to 5% of application functionality, right? Because a lot of time to navigate, they need to sign into multiple applications. Some are web-based, some are on their local machines, some are on their corporate infrastructure. With the Citrix technology, you could bring that all together with a digital workspace, and it doesn't really matter where it resides. It just looks like it all resides from the one portal that you provide to your client. So again, to be able to increase the productivity of your employees, having them be more integrated, more effective, utilizing more tools to help them better do their job for the organization and for the clients of that organization. And then also for employee onboarding and time to productivity, it takes about 18 months for an employee to become fully productive. So if you could cut that time down significantly, you're getting better utilization from that employee and hopefully better output from that employee, which should deliver better customer satisfaction and better productivity to the organization. So when we look at the Citrix solution, it really addresses the business challenges we're talking about: security and compliance, paramount to ensure that it's compliant with organization security policies. It has built-in security, again, that doesn't hinder the utilization of flexibility. Device flexibility, virtually any device from anywhere, empowering a remote workforce. Simplifying application and desktop management. It also has tools that allow you to manage the distribution and the access and control over those applications, which also speed up enhance employee onboarding and have a desktop available to an end user in a matter of minutes rather than in a matter of days or weeks, or taking the idea of ordering a PC, putting in a PO, waiting for the PC to come in, building an image on it, deploying the applications, testing it. If that could all be done ahead of time and you have an image that you basically could subscribe to a cloud solution based on Citrix technology, and you could have that desktop ready in a matter of minutes anywhere in the world. So let's talk a little bit about security a little bit more. The idea that we have around our digital workplace and our security is trust nothing, but you need to protect everything, right? So what does that mean? It means that any application, whether it's sanctioned or unsanctioned, that you have to have the ability to track, to manage, and to have access and information and audit that application. On any device, whether it's a managed device or unmanaged device, you need to have access, you need to secure it. And also from any location, as we talked about, people working from home, people working from office, people are mobile and on the road. And in all these circumstances, we need to make sure that we have that protection and that concept of trust nothing but protect everything. So legacy security approaches were not designed to meet these challenges because they don't have an integrated architecture designed to do that. And we will look what Citrix has done is they've taken the Gartner approach and basically have built their unified security infrastructure based around the SASE environment. So they have secure internet access, they have secure workplace access, they have the proper analytics, and they integrate and operate within an SD-WAN environment. So all their components, pieces and parts all fit within this model that, again, has been a Gartner kind of approved approach to application access from any device, anywhere. So one of the solutions that ATSG has, besides taking the Citrix solution and implementing it on site for a client with it, whether it's in data center or on their infrastructure, we have built, based upon Citrix infrastructure, a technology and a product called DinCloud, which is basically a virtual desktop that's out in the cloud, right? So it's in our cloud data centers. We've taken and built technology and an abstraction layer or a management port that alleviates all the configuration, all the operation, all the deployment, all the security, and allows you to input those parameters and basically have a virtual desktop or a digital workplace device available anytime, anywhere, right? You can configure how much CPU, how much memory, how much disk you need. Your image could be automatically loaded on it. You can have images that are authorized by your organization, all managed through our DIN Manage console that helps orchestrate that cloud management and deployment of those desktops. So it's really a great way that an organization may look at it and say, you know what, I either have Citrix infrastructure and I want to move away from that because I want to move away from that capital expenses with operating locally and move to the cloud, which is a great way to do it. Or again, they could say, you know what, I have this infrastructure and I want to be able to build upon it so that I could enable this digital workplace strategy. But our solutions are really twofold. Again, we could build that platform for our clients on their infrastructure, or with our cloud, we could really deploy our DinCloud technology, which again is based upon Citrix technology to deploy a digital workplace in a matter of minutes. And if we look at some of the benefits to that, it's really a fast, consistent, and secure way to do that. Again, it's built around Citrix, so it has all the, security, simplicity in architecture design talked about. You can rapidly deploy hundreds to thousands of users at the same time. There's no upfront capital, so you pay for what you use. You could scale up and scale down on demand. It's a cloud model. Easier to manage. All the statistics and who's using what and how that's being consumed, they're all available. And we also have the ability to provide enhanced security, and it has built-in business continuity and disaster recovery, so that you're never down if for some reason that particular cloud or that connectivity goes down. We have the ability to do complete business continuity or DR with that, so an end user would never have the ability to be down. So basically, in a nutshell, to summarize it all, between ATSG and Citrix, our solutions offer a fast, consistent, and secure work from anywhere experience across any device, anywhere, while simplifying that architecture and operations. So with that, what I'd like to do is turn it over to Dave. Dave is trained many Fortune 500 leaders. He has many courses on LinkedIn that have been viewed tens of millions of times. Author of 5 books, many appearances in Time Magazine, Fast Company, USA Today, and BBC News. So we're very happy and pleased to have Dave Crenshaw here today. So I will pause here, see if there's any questions, and if not, Dave, take it away.
Great. Well, thank you very much. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here and also pull up my chat so that I can interact with you all. And thank you so much for having me here, Tony and Stacy. And I'm glad to be part of the ATSG family today. So what I want to do is talk to you about the myth of multitasking, how doing it all is making it so that you're not getting things done the way that you want to. And just by way of introduction, I'm reaching you from Salt Lake City, Utah. I do have 3 children and 1 wife. Just always like to get that, in case people are wondering. And, you mentioned the different things that I've been involved in, the accolades I've received, Time, Fast Company, USA Today, the BBC. But if you'll indulge me for just 1 second, I like to share the one thing that's happened that's cooler than anything else in my career. Now, I don't know if you're familiar with Chuck Norris facts. These are jokes that have been making their way around the internet for a long time. Things like Chuck Norris makes onions cry. Chuck Norris doesn't do push-ups. He pushes the earth away from him. There's this one popped up over the last year, which I loved, that he's been exposed to COVID, and now the virus is in quarantine for 14 days. Well, the reason why I share that with you is in the official Chuck Norris fact book, written by the Chuck Norris himself, he cites me and my book, The Myth of Multitasking, that I'll be talking to you about today. It's actually under the Chuck Norris fact that Chuck Norris can kill 2 stones with 1 bird. So there's nothing that will ever happen cooler than that in my career. So one thing that I love to do is when I'm interacting virtually, I'm usually up speaking to live audiences. I like to get a feel for you and how you're doing. You've got the chat window right here in WebEx. So I'd love it if you're watching this, if you take a moment and type in to say where you're from and how you're doing. Just I'm doing great, something like that, so that we get in the habit of communicating with each other back and forth. So as you're doing that, as you take a moment to type that in, let me make sure I've got my chat window open. The tendency when you hear a presenter is to focus on taking notes, and you certainly can take notes, but a lot of what I'm going to share with you is available through training online and through my books. So rather than focusing on taking notes on the hopefully amazing, wonderful things I say to you, I would encourage you to take notes on the amazing, wonderful things that you say to you. For example, there will be moments during this presentation where the proverbial light bulb will go off over your head, and you'll say, oh, man, I need to do that. When that happens, that's what I'd encourage you to write down. Focus on the actions rather than taking notes. Because as we go through this, there will be some actions that you will say, oh, I need to do. So that's a little bit about me and what we're doing during this presentation. Now what I'd like to do is ask you a question. By the way, Blake, thanks for saying hi. He's in St. Louis, Missouri, and he's feeling grateful. Glad to have you here, Blake. So the first question that I'd like to ask you is, and I'd like you to share this in the chat window, if you had an extra 40 hours per month, what would you do with the time? So imagine that you get done everything that you need to get done in your workday, and still magically at the end of the month, you found yourself with the equivalent of a bonus work week's worth of free time. What would you do? How would you spend it? Let me give you a moment to think about that, because your answer is very important to this presentation. Go ahead and type that into the chat window when you have a moment. Now, the reason why I start with this question is because sometimes when people hear that the presentation is going to be dealing with time management, the perception is that it's going to be sort of a dry topic, or we've heard all this stuff before. But rather than focusing on that, I would prefer you to focus on what you will do with the time, because it's very, very real that you can get this amount of time. I've had clients that I've worked with call me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon and say, Dave, I thought you were crazy when you told me that I'd get extra 40 hours per month. It's 3 o'clock. I don't know what to do with myself. That's a very real outcome. Now, in this training, in the 45 minutes they've given me here, I probably can't get you all of that, but I can get you around 10 to 20 hours of bonus time every month that you can spend as you want. For instance, Randy saying that he'd spend more time with family and friends, especially my son. That's a perfect example of how you can do that. And I've had people say sleep as one of their things, or their hobbies. Now, as you're thinking about that, I'd like to talk about the three groups of people in a productivity sense that I've worked with through the years. There are three distinct groups. The first is what I call the focus master. They operate almost as if in a Zen-like space in terms of their time management. They, almost from the moment of birth, have always been on time, always been organized. They've never had any issue with time management at all. Typically, when I speak to live audiences, I get up on stage and I ask people to self-identify. How many of you are focus masters and have never had any issues with time management? It's usually about 1 to 2% of the audience. And my message, if you're a focus master, is my job is to help the rest of the screwed up people around you be more productive. Because the focus master's problem is they just say, well, why can't everyone do what I do? Just do what I do and everything will be solved. But that's a bit like handing a gourmet cake recipe to a 5-year-old. The instructions may be accurate, but they're not equipped to do everything that's on that list. What I'm going to give you instead is a more productive way to talk to people so that they can take control of their time. Now, the second group is the nomad. And the nomad has the heart and soul of a focus master. They used to be organized. They used to be in control, and it's frustrating to them that they don't have that control anymore. And they wonder where they got off track with time management. Why did they start falling behind? Why are they feeling stressed? My job for the nomad is to show you where you went off path and how to get back to that place of focus master-like existence. And the third group, well, the third group is the chaos master. And the chaos master has never really been organized. In fact, it's their natural tendency to create disorder. These are the people that you go into their office and everything's all over the place, and they say, well, I know where things are. Now, the chaos masters are, I've worked with many successful chaos masters. Many of them are in sales, many of them are entrepreneurs, and it's just that they've learned how to be successful in spite of their natural tendency to create chaos and disorder. And my job is to show them how to behave as if they are focus masters without losing that ability to be creative and build relationships. Now, I start with this to give you the opportunity to figure out where are you at on this scale between focus and chaos, and also to understand that there's something here for you. But it's also to help you understand where I, your presenter, fall on this list. I am naturally a chaos master. Now, this isn't a picture of my office, what it used to be, but it's pretty close. Now you can see my office. This is not a background. This is my real home office right now. You can see how it looks like a Focus Master existence, but that's what I've learned to do in spite of my natural tendency. And my chaos was not just a matter of physical space, it was also a matter of career. I would jump from career to career to career, everything from starting as a business coach to going back to it later, to being a sales rep, to being a high school teacher, to that picture down at the bottom. I don't know if you can see that. That's me with my band. I tried to be a rock star for a few years. So this chaos continued for many years until I heard two words. And these two words changed my life. And you guess what those two words are? The two words were, and then my wife said them to me, I'm pregnant. Now, if you want a man to sober up very quickly, say those two words to him. And I thought, my goodness, I need to get control of this. Not only was it an issue for me, but it was an issue for my father, who had the same pattern, but it never really stopped in his life, up to his passing at age 80. And so I thought, I need to get control of this. What do I do? Well, I went out and saw the help of a psychologist. And I sat down with a psychologist, and he said, well, okay, let me give you a test. He gave me a test, filled out all the answers. I handed it to him. His eyes got really big, and he said, I'm sorry, I've got to give you another test. So he gave me another test, and I filled out all the answers, and I handed it to him. And then he kind of shook his head, and then he said words I'll never forget, word for word. He said, has anyone ever talked to you about ADHD? I said, well, I'm not ADHD. That's some, he said, no, you are, word for word, you are freaking off the charts ADHD. If there were a fifth standard deviation, you'd be in it. I can say with 99.99% accuracy, you've got it. Now, why do I start with this story? First, to understand who it is that's speaking to you, because most of the time when you hear a time management expert, a time management guru, they are inherently focus masters. They've never had any issue with time management. And so, like the example I gave, they're handing these elaborate, very well thought out plans to people to get control of their time management, but most people are unable to execute on that plan. The second part of it is that because of what I've dealt with on a genetic standpoint, I understand what most people are dealing with in a cultural standpoint. And by cultural, I mean that this is the world that we live in, right? We live in a world that is addicted to jumping from task to task. It's addicted to multitasking, from switching from technology, from device to all these wonderful tools that Tony talked to you about. And it's happening so fast that we're slowing ourselves down and not really realizing what's happening. How much are we slowing ourselves down? How much is it costing us? Well, in the years that I've worked with consulting people and organizations of every size, I've worked from freelancers to Fortune 500 companies. And what I found is that about 1/4 of your time is lost due to switches and switching cost. And then later I saw a study by a group called Basics Research that had the hard numbers that showed that it was 28%. Now, what was the first question I asked you? What would you do if you had what? An extra 40 hours per month. Well, this is where that time comes from. It's just one thing. This one thing is costing you a tremendous amount of time. Now, Basics estimated at the time that the cost of the US economy was $1 trillion lost to switches and switching costs. 1 trillion is a ridiculous number. It's so big, it's nonsensical. So I want to put it down to a personal level. First, how much are you worth per hour? If I met you at a cocktail party, at a mixer or something, and I said, I want to hire you to consult me how to do what it is that you do, what would you charge me per hour? Okay, get that number in your head. Second question, how many hours per week do you work? Now, most people have an immediate answer. Oh, I work 40 hours a week. I work 45 hours a week. But before you answer that question, understand that my definition of a work week, as someone who consults and coaches on productivity, it includes travel time to and from work. It's a little less now that many of us are working from home. And also time spent thinking about work while we're at home or off the clock. Now, when I put that second part in, it changes things a little bit, doesn't it? You're working a lot more than you think you are. But everyone I'm speaking to here is a knowledge worker, right? Are you not paid to use your brain? Of course you are. So when you're thinking about work, it doesn't matter where you are or what time of the day it is, you're working. Now let's see what this actually is costing you. If we took the middle of the road with this number and we just looked at this chart, what we're doing is we're taking the hours per week you're working, your value per hour, and then multiplying that by 28%. So if we were in the middle, if we just said you're worth $50 an hour and you're working 50 hours a week, that means that you're losing in opportunity cost $700 per week, every single week. If you have payroll, 1/4 of that payroll is nothing. You're paying for people to do nothing but pay switching cost. And I'm not talking about time spent, people talking about what they saw watching Squid Game last night. I'm talking about time that is lost in the seams and they're not even aware of it. And we're going to do a little exercise together. What I'd like you to do is get a piece of paper. Any piece of paper will do. And take that piece of paper. Where'd my pen go? You take that piece of paper and you make it look just like what you see on the screen. So you're going to draw 3 lines across. Oh, this is a silver pen. It's not going to show up very well, but you take it and you draw 3 lines across it to make 4 rows. Those aren't very clean, are they? It doesn't matter. You just want 4 rows, okay? Make it look like what you see on your screen. Now I'm going to give some instructions on what to do with this. Don't start until I say go, because this is a timed activity. So one of the things that I talk about in my book, The Myth of Multitasking, is this phrase. Multitasking is worse than a lie. Now, I don't know if you've heard this quote. It comes from Mark Twain. He said, there are lies, damned lies, and what? Statistics, right? Because it's commonly known that 70% of all statistics are just made up on the spot. I say there are lies, damned lies, and multitasking. Multitasking is worse than a lie. Why? Because it is a lie that we live every day. Our digital, constantly connected culture is causing us, or we are causing ourselves, to constantly switch task back and forth between tasks. When you think you're multitasking, you're not really multitasking most of the time. What you're really doing is switching rapidly back and forth between tasks. So we're going to do an exercise that simulates that. So here are the instructions. Don't start until I say go. What you're going to do is in the first row, you're going to write out what you see. Multitasking is worse than a lie. And in the second row, you're going to write out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, all the way to 27. And you're going to time yourself on how long it takes to do that. Just write down your approximate time when you're done. This is not a think outside the box activity. I want you to do exactly what you see on the screen, right? Multitasking is worse than a lie. And then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way to 27. Okay? So get your pens out. Let me get my clock up here. Get your pens out. Get your paper ready. Get set and go. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. Remember to write down your approximate time when you're done. 15. 20. 25. 30. We'll go 10 more. 35. And 40. And at this point, most people are done. Okay, great. Pretty easy, right? Now what we're going to do is we're going to do this again, but we're going to simulate what is actually happening when you think you're multitasking. In most cases, you're doing what I define in my book as switch tasking. See, multitasking, the word itself, creates a lot of problems because it's not an accurate descriptor of what's really happening in your brain and in reality. What you're really doing, in most cases, is switch tasking, meaning you're switching rapidly back and forth between tasks. So we're going to simulate that with this one. So this time, in the third row, you're going to write multitasking is worse than a lie, and 1 through 27. But for every letter that you write, you're going to write the number. So you'll write M, and then 1, and then, let's see here, it's going, and then 1, M, and then 1, and then U, and then 2, and then L, and then 3, and so on, back and forth, until you make your paper look just like what you see on the screen. Okay? Get your pens out again. Get ready, get set, and go. 5 seconds. 10 seconds. 15. 20. 25. 30. This is where we were when most of you stopped last time. 35. 40. 45. 50. 55. 60. We'll go 10 more seconds. 65. And 70. And if you're not done now, just give up. You just experienced the first 3 costs of switch tasking. When you switch, you must pay certain costs. They're unavoidable. Number 1, time, the amount of time it takes to complete things. So for many of you who were doing this activity, you saw an increase of anywhere from 50% to twice as long. Now, some of you will say, well, Dave, that's not reality. That's not what my workday is like. This is kind of an oversimplification. You're right, it is an oversimplification. Here's what it's like for you during your workday. You'll be sitting at your computer. You'll be answering an email. You're crafting this well thought out response to someone's issue. And then all of a sudden, what happens? Your phone, it beeps. A message comes through, right? And you look at it, switch, and then you read what they're saying, and they're asking you this important question. So then you think of your response, and then you type it, and you say 42, and then you put down your phone. What do you need to do now? All right, I need to figure out, what was I looking at on my computer screen? Where was I? I have to read the email again. I have to get my mind back in that spot and start retyping the email. Lots of lost time. Or if you're off the charts ADHD or a chaos master like me, you'll put down the phone, you'll look over, you'll see a piece of paper on your desk, you'll pick up that paper and go, oh my gosh, I didn't finish that. And you start working on that paper and you make 2 phone calls and then you go to lunch and then you come back and then 3 hours later, you still have an unfinished email on your screen. Sound familiar? Whenever you switch tasks, the amount of time it takes to complete things increases. What's the second effect? Take a look between the first and second time you did this activity. Notice anything different? Notice numbers going up and down. Notice numbers or letters crossed out. How did the quality change? Or be honest, how many of you ended up on a number other than 27? Right? Now this is a group, attendees who are highly intelligent, highly educated people. I gave you clear instructions, and yet you found a way to mess it up. Sound familiar? When you're working with people, you've given them clear instructions, and yet they're still messing it up. When that happens, that almost always is a symptom of switch tasking, trying to do too many things at once, than it is of incompetence. By the way, Blake, thanks for sharing your score. 20 seconds versus 63 seconds. Man, I'm supposed to be the best note taker. That's great. Now, what's the third effect? This one isn't quite so obvious until I ask you to think about. Think about how you felt between the first and second time you did this activity. Notice any differences? Now, this is the simplest of activities, right? Copying numbers and letters off we've been doing that since we were kindergartners. We've been doing this our whole life. Yet the moment we introduce switch tasking into the equation, it becomes painful. It becomes difficult. The first time I was calling out the time every 5 seconds didn't bug you, right? But the second time when I was calling it out every 5 seconds, Some of you were thinking, Dave, shut up. I'm trying to focus. I know, because people have said it to me when I'm speaking live on stage. It's crazy how difficult something becomes simply because we're switching back and forth between it. Is it little wonder that we live in a world that has so many time-saving devices and so many stress-relieving outlets, and yet we feel we have less time and we're more stressed out than we've ever been in the history of the world? And who is to blame for this? Who is it? Who created this problem? It's Al Gore. Al Gore did it, right? He invented the internet. No, it's not Al, it's not Steve, it's not Elon, it's not Bill, it's not any of these inventors or people who pushed forward technology. It is not technology that is the problem. It's our improper choices that we're making with technology that is the problem. So just to recap, whenever you switch task, which most people think of as multitasking, the amount of time it takes to complete things increases. The quality decreases and stress levels increase. Now, some of the more critical-minded of you might say, well, Dave, that's not a real example. What about, for instance, what about if I'm exercising, right? I'm running on the treadmill and I'm watching TV. Isn't that multitasking? And this is where that problem with the word comes in, and it's why in my book I introduced two new terms. The first I've already given you, switch tasking. That's whenever you're trying to do two attention-requiring tasks at the same time. But there is another thing that can happen, which is back tasking, as short for background tasking, meaning something mindless, mundane, automatic is occurring in the background. So let's use that example. If I'm running on the treadmill and I'm watching TV, what is occurring in the background? What don't I have to think about? Hopefully at this point, running is not something I have to think about. I've reached the point where I can walk and chew gum at the same time. So I'm focusing on the show that I'm watching, and the other is happening automatically. Back tasking can be effective. Back tasking also occurs when you delegate a task to someone else while you focus on something. It's the equivalent of putting a pizza in the oven that bakes while you're making the salad. Back tasking can be efficient, can be productive. But the problem is, most of the time when someone says, I'm a good multitasker, they're really referring to switch tasking, and that's always less effective. The second thing, objection that I've heard through the years I've done this, it really comes down to this phrase. I've heard this many times. Well, women can what? Women can multitask, but men can't, right? I'm going to cut through all of the research that I've read through and just get right down to the point, because I have coached a lot of successful women. And what I have learned in working with them is that women do incur less switching cost than men do. In other words, they can transition and incur less of a slowdown, less mistakes, less stress. But what? What's the problem with that statement? They are still incurring switching cost. And this is true regardless. I've heard, well, teenagers can handle this. Kids can handle it because they've grown up with it. Or I'm a good multitasker, other people aren't. By the way, statistically speaking, if you think you're a good multitasker, studies out of the University of Utah have shown the people who think they are the best at multitasking are typically statistically the worst at it. It doesn't matter what your gender is. It doesn't matter what your age or your background is. This is simply a matter of math. And when you are trying to fight the math, you will always lose. Whenever someone says that they are good at multitasking, what they are saying is they've become highly efficient at screwing up multiple things at the same time. Our goal is not to get better at multitasking or switch tasking. Our goal is to reduce how much of it occurs, because even the slowest single tasker will always beat a fast multitasker. Now, some of you will say, well, Dave, okay, this is great, but what do we do? And I don't want to make this presentation just about stop multitasking. That's not going to change anything, because I'm sure some of you have heard this before. What I'm more interested in is a change in behavior. So what I'm going to do is arm you with some switch busters. If you're familiar with the old show Mythbusters, right? I'm going to help you bust some switches. Can we get rid of all the switches in your day? No, that's not practical, and that's not what I'm proposing. but we can implement some simple strategies that will reduce how often the switches occur. So the first issue that many people, when they hear this, they think of this, right? Especially in the world that we live in right now, our job descriptions have so many different responsibilities. And you go, well, Dave, I've got too many hats that I wear, too many different things to do. And that's true. So what you want to do is start to identify only that which is most valuable. I call these your MVAs, or your most valuable activities. And you want to devote the majority of your work time to those MVAs. That will help you reduce switching, and it will also increase your value in the marketplace. Now, what are your top 2 MVAs? They're going to be different for most everyone. Usually it comes down to something related to training others, developing leadership, or it could be in making sales and building relationships external to the company, that sort of thing. It also can be, if you're an entrepreneur or a business owner, it's being the visionary. It's creating systemic changes. It gives you some rough ideas of what the MVAs are. You can list out all of the different activities that you perform, not by the work, like I wouldn't write down email or text messages, but I'd rather write down sales and marketing and training and development and all those different things, and then estimate how much time I'm spending in my work week in those activities. If I were to ask you how many hours per do you work in just those MVAs in an average week, what would you guess? In my experience consulting people and sitting down with them one-on-one and going through the numbers, I've found that the average business leader spends about 22% or less of their time in the top 2 MVAs. That means the other 78, 80% of the time, they're focused on the lowest value work. It's sort of the 80-20 principle, but in reality with some stark numbers. What we want to do instead is create an ideal schedule. And the ideal schedule is different than your actual schedule. So you sort of lay this over the top. A lot of calendaring systems allow you to create a secondary calendar, and then you can lay them on top of each other so you can look at both at the same time. So for instance, this isn't just a rough example of someone's MVA schedule. They identified that their number 1 MVA is leadership training, and their number 2 is business development or sales. So what they do is they say, you know what, I'm going to try and dedicate Fridays to training people and creating programs for training people and making those that I manage and lead become more effective. And then I'm going to devote the hours around lunch roughly to doing business development. And then when you have an opportunity to schedule something, you put it into that slot. I was coaching someone just this morning and they were saying, well, Dave, I find that I'm more focused during this time. I said, great, then schedule your MVAs during the time that you're most focused. In other words, give your best, most energetic time to the best, most valuable work. That's a great place to start. Second, sometimes you hear the phrase, time is money, right? Time is money. I don't know if that's always true. Spending time with my 3 kids, spending time with my wife, is that money? I don't know if that's necessarily true. But what I do know is true is time is like money. Time behaves as if it were money. I'll give you an example. If you go into debt with money, what is the cost? If I buy something on a credit card, what does that mean? What am I going to have to do with that? Well, I'm going to have to repay it with interest. Assuming I don't pay it off that month, I have to repay it with interest. Well, can you go into debt with time? Most people, is there a bank of time that you can borrow from? Well, the reality is you can borrow time. You're just borrowing one thing to pay something else. For instance, if I borrow from sleep to pay HBO Max, I'm going to have to repay that the next day with interest, right? I'm going to be slower. I'm not going to perform as well. If I borrow from a date with my wife to pay work, you can't tell me I'm not going to have to repay that with interest over a long period of time, right? So what we want to do, just as we do with money, we don't want to overspend. We don't want to spend every single dollar that we have. We want to leave some in the bank. And this is a common misperception with time management. The idea that I've got to maximize every minute. No. In fact, trying to do that perpetuates switch tasking because you're leaving no room for error, no room for interruptions in a world that is driven by interruptions. So instead, one switch buster is to leave a cushion. Leave a space between everything. Don't schedule appointments back to back to back. That's not realistic. We want to leave room. We want to schedule shorter appointments with a little bit of a cushion. In other words, Google Calendar has a built-in 50-minute, they call it speedy meetings, and it will automatically set 1-hour meetings for 50 minutes or 30-minute meetings to 25. You can do that manually, or maybe your calendar has that option. And within the day itself, you can say, I'm going to leave a certain number of hours open. The more likely you are to be interrupted in your position at work, the more buffer space you want to leave. So if you're not often interrupted, then maybe you only need to leave 30 minutes to an hour open in your schedule. But if you're someone who's dealing with tech support and you're responding, you have to be constantly available for those kinds of things, then maybe you don't schedule any more than 40% of your day with activities. If you get interrupted, you've got the space set aside for it. And if you don't get interrupted, it's like you've got bonus time. It's amazing how simple this principle is. By the way, we talked about working from home. One thing that is really important is leaving buffer for important moments that happen within your day. So for instance, in this rough example, let's say the children get home from school at 3, you'd want to leave buffer time on either side of that to give yourself time to transition to deal with that. And that applies with anything. Any time where you know you're going to be interrupted, you prepare for that interruption, you build it into your schedule, rather than trying to multitask and look at your phone while other people are trying to get your attention. This leads to the next switchbuster, the finish line. Well, what's a finish line in a race? Finish line is the point at which you know you've won. It's the point at which you stop. Many people pride themselves on their, they say, I'm a hard worker. I'm going to work as long as it takes to get the job done. And working hard is a virtue. That is a good thing. But working as long as it takes, having an absence of a finish line, is not productive. It perpetuates sloppy productivity. It allows inefficiencies to occur in your day. So in this case, actually creating a restraint, saying, I'm not going to cross this line. I'm not going to allow myself to work past 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. or whatever your number is. It forces you to say, wait a minute, I'm not going to be able to get everything done in the day that I need to. What do I need to change? What do I need to improve? What are the systemic changes that I can make to make myself more productive? Constraints have value, and then one of the easiest places to do that is to create the finish line. And it can also be days of the week. You can say, my finish line is on Friday. I don't work Saturday and Sunday. And set something that's realistic for you. If you've been in the habit of working till 9 p.m. every night, don't try to jump to 5 p.m. as your finish line. It's too much. But maybe you go from 9 to 8:30 and then push it a little bit further in a month or two. Also, if you work with people in different time zones, you can have multiple finish lines. For instance, let's say I work with suppliers in China, I might work till 1 p.m. as my finish line, and then I take a break to deal with things at home, and then I start work again at 8 p.m. and work till 1 a.m. It doesn't matter where those finish lines are, it just matters that they exist. By the way, just kind of on a funny note, it's always fun when your children, as a parent, sometimes if you've got kids, you feel like you're talking to them, you're trying to give them advice, but they won't listen to you. So it's really nice when something actually sinks in. One time I stepped out of my office one day and one of my kids had left this outside their door. They were letting me know when their finish line and when they were going to come back from school. I thought that was nice. Great. Now, let's talk about, so far we've really talked about the things that you can control, right? Your schedule, your choices. But let's talk about all the interactions that you're having with other people, all the emails, all the phone calls, everything that's coming at you. One of the biggest things that you can do, especially in a hybrid or work from home environment, is to create expectations, channel expectations. By this, I mean that we transition from the culture of now to the culture of when. Now, it sounds clever. What does that mean? Well, the culture of now says, if I have a question, I want it answered now, right now. I'm going to send you a text message. You didn't answer the text message. So if I want an answer now, what do? Well, I'm going to give you a phone call. You didn't answer the phone call. So what am I going to do? I'm going to send you an email. And then you didn't answer the email. So I'm going to send you another text message. Now. All of this trying to get answers in the moment immediately perpetuates switch tasking. Can you see that? Because I'm constantly just responding or I'm asking people questions. Instead, the culture of when says, I am going to respond to every single message. I'm going to respond to every single email. And this is when I'm going to do it. I'm going to create expectations and I'm going to meet those expectations. The problem is right now, a lot of people depend on what they might refer to as common sense. Well, it's just common sense that if I send you a text, you should respond within 30 minutes or whatever it is. But common sense is not common. Unless we have a conversation about what these channels are and what the expectation should be, everyone's going to be operating by a different set of rules. So this means I recommend sitting down with your team and talking about each type of channel. In other words, if I send an email, how long is it appropriate to receive a response? 1 business day, several business hours? If I send a text message, when is the right time to use a text message versus an email? How long should that be? These are not discussions people are having, and it's creating havoc. When should I pick up the phone and call? By the way, just a hint, if you have a text message thread that goes back and forth more than 2 questions, you should be having a phone call, not a conversation on text. Because a phone call is going to resolve it in a couple of minutes. But if I have to switch back and forth 5, 6, 7, 8 times, can you see all that switching cost that I have to pay? And then finally, when is the right time to use project management tools? When is the right time to chat with each other? Create those expectations, have a conversation, put it on paper, put it in a document, and then get everyone on the same page. And you'll be shocked at how this reduces the amount of switch tasking and helps people transition from the culture of now to the culture of when. All right, one last switch buster that I want to cover. Now, if we were doing this live, I would do an activity with you if I was in person. Unfortunately, we won't be able to do it. But this revolves around a story of someone that I worked with. And he was constantly switch tasking on his family. And he wasn't giving them the time and attention. And there is a cost. There is a 4th cost that I haven't mentioned. Now, what were the first 3 costs? Let's review. The amount of time it takes to complete things increases. The quality of the work decreases. And stress level increases. But there is a 4th effect. And you can do this at the group. You can do this with friends and family. What you do is you get 2 people together, person A and person B. And person A talks to person B about something they're excited about, something they're passionate about, their favorite sports team, their favorite hobby, a family member, whatever. And they talk for 30 seconds while person B listens attentively, gives their full attention. Then, after that's done, you reverse roles. So now person B is talking about something they're passionate about, and person A is listening, but what do? They switch task. They look at their phone. Oh, yeah, that's really interesting. Oh, okay. They switch task for 30 seconds while the other person talks. When I do this with live audiences, I ask people at the end of that exercise, person B, who was just talking, how did that make you feel? In one word, how did you feel? And I hear things like neglected, distracted, ignored. Usually the word I hear most often is unimportant. Unimportant. Now imagine that. Someone calls your offices and you say, thank you for calling XYZ company where you're unimportant. How can I help you? Or you wake up, you start your day, you go downstairs, you see a friend, a loved one, a significant other, and you say, hi, you're unimportant. What are you going to do today? Now you would never do that, right? But you do that, right? Whenever you use your phone, your device, any kind of screen, any kind of object in favor of someone else, rather than paying attention to them, you're communicating to them that they're less important. So the 4th effect is the quality of relationships decreases. The switch buster is to focus on the person. Get in the habit that when a real human being is talking to you, you put it down, you put it away. The best testimonial I've ever received and won't use in terms of their name is the wife of that person that I spoke about before, the business owner who was constantly distracting everyone. And one time I was having dinner with some clients and we got done. We were putting on our jackets, get ready to go. And she took me by the hand. She pulled me aside. And with tears in her eyes, she said, "I don't know what you did to my husband, but thank you." This is the kind of impact that you can have when you give people your full attention, because the opposite is true. You communicate to them that they are important and they do matter. And every team member you work with and every customer that you have and every relationship that you have deserves to feel that way, and you can help them feel that way. All right, now I'm going to wrap up with a story in just a moment, but I want to pause for a second. At the beginning of this presentation, I said, don't take notes. Take what? Take action. So what I'd like you to think about, I gave you lots of different things to think about, but there were a couple of moments during this presentation where you said to yourself, that, I need to do that. What I'd like you to do is choose one of those actions. What's one action you're going to take as a result of what you learned in this presentation? Because it's not the knowledge that's going to help you. It's the action that you take on that knowledge that matters. So I'd encourage you to send yourself an email to do that. Put that task somewhere where you can do it and tell others, I am going to do this. I'm going to create a finish line. I'm going to start focusing on people. I'm going to focus on my most valuable activities. Whatever it is, make that commitment to someone else. By the way, if you want to get the full detailed version of my training, it's all available on LinkedIn Learning. It's what I have on LinkedIn Learning is the same thing that a CEO of a Fortune 500 company is going to pay me tens of thousands of dollars to walk through with them. If you're not on LinkedIn Learning, you can get a 30-day free trial. All of my courses are on davecrenshaw.com/learn. And the big one that I'd recommend from this is Time Management Fundamentals. That'll take you from getting the 20 hours from this presentation to the full 40. All right, I'm going to finish with a brief story that kind of wraps up everything that we've talked about. Now, this is about one of my favorite hobbies. This may not be your hobby. That's fine. And I've had lots of experiences like this since then. As you're hearing this story, I want you to think about, when was the last time that this happened to me? And what did I do in this situation? So I'm a big football fan. I love the NFL. And I was watching the Super Bowl. This was many years back. And we had friends over. We had the chips. We had the dips. We had everything. We were into the game. My gosh, it was a great game, one for the ages. And I'm on the edge of my seat, just, really dialed in and watching this and enjoying it. And I look down and I see this. Now, this is my son, Stratton, when he was 2. And he came to me, kind of got in my face, and held up a book and said, "Daddy, read story." In the middle of the Super Bowl. Are you kidding me? What's wrong with you, kid? I'm watching the game. Now, what could you do in this situation? First of all, DVR, not an option. We have friends there. I'm not going to say, can I pause the game while I read this? You all watch me read this? No, that's not going to happen. Number 2, I say, no, go away. I'm watching this. But that's really hard to do to a face like that, right? Number 3, I multitask, right? I can put them on my lap and I'll read the story. And then they went into the woods and they went fishing. Touchdown, right? But I know that there are 4 effects of switch tasking. What are they? Number 1, the amount of time it takes to complete things increases. Number 2, the quality of the work decreases. Number 3, stress levels for me and for my son increases. And number 4, the quality of relationships decreases. So you know what I did? I decided to read him the dang story. I do try to practice what I preach. So I mentally turned off the football game and I sat there and I read him the story. You know how long it took? Like 2 minutes, right? Because I've read it to my daughters since then. And then after I read him the story, he said, "Thank you, Daddy," and went off and did whatever 2-year-olds do. I don't know what I missed during those few minutes. A sack, a fumble, funny beer commercial, I don't know what it was. But what I knew and what my son knew was that during that moment, I had nothing more important to do than to focus on him. These are the opportunities that you have in your day, not just with relationships, but also with work. You have the opportunity to focus on others and communicate to them that they are important, that they do matter. And that's a powerful statement in a world that's addicted to the myth of multitasking. Thank you so much for being attentive and listening. I really appreciate it. And thank you to ATSG for bringing me in so that I could share this presentation with you. It was great to work with you. I will stop.
Thank you, Dave. So that concludes our presentation for today. This is Tony again. I'd like to thank everyone for attending and appreciate the time. Any follow-ups, please follow up with Stacy, I'm sorry. And then, we will certainly get back to you and follow up and practice what we preach. And I appreciate the knowledge. That was fantastic, fantastic presentation today. So thank you all again. Have a very healthy, safe week and look forward to speaking to everyone. Take care. Bye-bye.